today to talk to you a little bit about the formal review of assessment process and how it's a really good tool for improvement for you to work with your department faculty to improve your programs, not necessarily just to improve assessment, but to also improve your programs. So I have a little short PowerPoint that I'll go through. I want to take you through the summary report, and I'll hit some highlights from that. And then also will show you where some things are on our website and call your attention to a few things that are new as far as assessment at UWF. So assessment is, it's always helpful, I think, to kind of review what that is. It is a task, but it's a task with a purpose. So it's defined as a systematic examination of curriculum and teaching practices to determine their impact on student learning. So your overarching goal for your assessment process within your department as you do it for your educational programs would be one of self-reflection and through the lens of improvement. So that's what we hope everybody, how everybody will view this. It is often about compliance, and we do use your reports to demonstrate compliance to show that we do that. But really, the whole purpose is improvement of your program. So formal review of assessment is actually a meta-assessment process. We assess the assessment at UWF, and we've been doing it for about 6 years now. We've gone through the sixth cycle. This started back when Claudia had Cutla, and I think the very first year it was 6 years ago. Um, but we like to continue to do formal review of assessment because it really provides a wealth of information about improvement that's used across the institution. So it's a good way for us to kind of get a feel for where the maturity of our assessment culture is at the university. And we do that by actually examining the assessment reports. It also tells us and can tell the leadership of the colleges and the provost office what some areas of professional development would be for faculty and departments, like what areas seem to be weak. Do we need to talk more about direct assessment? Do we need to talk about some of the other things? Do we need to talk about implementation fidelity? Or if you find an issue with one of your outcomes, is there some sort of targeted development that your department might benefit from? You know, if you're not the communication department, but you have a communication SLO, which everybody does, you might want some targeted professional development about how you can do that in a hard science or how you can do that in healthcare. So we can get some ideas about where some of the gaps might be. And then probably for departments, the most valuable part is that targeted feedback from reviewers on specific ways that you can improve your assessment story and how you tell your quality story of what happens in your department. The very first formal review took place in 2016, and it was a review of the undergraduate programmatic assessment reports in 2014, 2015. And so the first 4 years alternated between undergraduate 1 year and graduate assessment reports. And for those of you that have been with the university and were here back in that time, you'll remember that those assessment reports were submitted through a Qualtrics survey. It was a little clunky. It had some issues of its own. We started that formal review process, and we've got those reports that go all the way back. So as departments started to see that and go through the process, we noticed some improvements. But when I joined the university in 2018, I kind of did an audit of the assessment process and talked to people, NIE, talked with Claudia and Cutla, and talked with some of you to find out what some of the issues might be around assessment. And one of the first things we determined we probably needed to get rid of was the actual Qualtrics survey. So it served a really good purpose initially because it allowed some uniformity to or brought some order to the chaos, because before that it was kind of the wild west. You could just turn in anything for assessment and there was no structure. So it did give the whole process some structure, but it was also it was just really clunky. We didn't really ask good questions. That was another thing that I found, is that, you know, some of the questions that we really needed faculty to answer about what assessment was doing for their department as far as improving their programs, we weren't asking you the right questions. So it was almost miraculous sometimes if departments would give really good answers, because I thought I would never have gotten that response out of that question. So we made some changes, and we did some things to make it a little bit easier. So we did a spreadsheet. Again, that gave it a little bit more structure. We pre-filled your outcomes. So whatever's on your ALC or ALP that came through CCR process and went through that full review, those are the outcomes that are already on there. So you don't have to go hunt them down. They're there. You just report on them. And then we made all the forms available through the IE website. So we tried to make it easy for you to get to your stuff. So the formal review process itself all pivots on departments submitting these programmatic assessment reports, and that's typically done over the summer at the end of the academic year. And then we also encourage departments to include additional documents along with that report, and those would be things such as meeting minutes. If you used a rubric to score one of the departmental assessments, some departments will submit redacted student work samples. We don't need everything, but they might submit a couple of work samples. And basically any other document that you feel like allows you to tell your assessment story in the best way possible. We'll take all those in addition to the report. So we, and somebody had asked this earlier, so I will go back just a moment. So we said over the summer, and we just sent out an email very recently, end of April, to let you know that the new templates were out. And the target date to get those in is always going to be June 30th. However, if your department is one of those departments that likes to meet and finalize their assessment findings and their actionable user results, like what are we going to do with this information that we got and how are we going to implement it for the coming year? A lot of departments like to do that in August as the term is starting. So we would much rather you just tell us that you're going to meet in August and finalize this, and we can expect your report August 15th, August 21st, whenever it is. Let us know. We will make a note of that, and you won't continue to get emails from us. We'll wait and wait to hear from you when you get that completed. And the main reason that we've done that is one of the other things that I noticed as I started to audit our assessment reports from prior years was that departments would often use future language, which that wasn't really helpful. Like they would say, well, we're going to meet in August and discuss this, but we had this hard and fast deadline of June 30th to submit the report. And there was no way for them to capture that before they submitted. So they would it was like an IOU for this, but we never got a follow-up report. And so we really didn't know what the faculty talked about. And so that really wasn't a really good assessment story. It was just kind of a promise that you're going to discuss it when you meet. And we had no idea if that actually happened or not. Would not be real good for a reviewer either, because again, it's not an actionable use of results. It's just future language that you're going to discuss it at some point, not prior to submitting the report. So we are very flexible with those target dates. We give you one because we feel like we have to put one out there. I know I need one, but just let us know if you need an extension on that. And we have never refused anybody an extension. So the formal review process works like this. In the fall, usually around October, November timeframe, there will be a call for reviewers that will go out to the faculty. Everybody who's in a faculty role that's in that distribution list will get that email from us. And so we hopefully will get a great pool. We've actually had the last several years, we've had big pools of people that were interested in being reviewers. So as reviewers get selected, these are the kind of parameters that we use. Number one, we like to have the reviewers from separate colleges. So far, we've been fortunate enough that we haven't had to have 2 reviewers from the same college, because we don't want reviewers to evaluate reports from departments within their own college. So whoever reviews your report, they will be faculty, but they're probably not going to be from within your college. And we've been fortunate enough that we've had a big enough pool and a varied enough pool that we've been able to meet that target every year, with the reviewer from separate colleges. The reviewers also will need to be available for calibration meetings that start in January and continue through April. So they get their assignment to review, and then we meet with the reviewers and they discuss, what they thought about this item, what they thought about this report, if there was any confusion. And so it's kind of to do that inter-rater reliability, and we like to get that up over 80%. The higher the better, but that's always our target, is to get it over 80% for our reviewers. So we do that with calibration meetings, and those when the first one that we did after we changed the reporting template, we started those face to face, and then you'll recall that we went remote mid-March last year, and so we continued those through Zoom or Google Meet. We still had the calibration meetings, but they were no longer face-to-face because we were all working remotely. This year, they were all completely remote, and I'm proud to say that the inter-rater reliability remained high, but we look forward to being able to have those meetings again face-to-face, hopefully in the spring. So hopefully the pandemic will continue to not be quite so grim. And then the other thing is that the reviewers will review all undergraduate and graduate level programmatic assessment reports. We've been able to do that for the last 2 years, mainly through the changes in the reporting instrument. With the old Qualtrics survey, if you had departments that would have done a Qualtrics survey report on individual items, if they reported on more than one item a year, that would be multiple clicks for the reviewer. So having kind of one omnibus report for all the outcomes that they reported on helps, and then they just click on any supplemental document. So it really helped a lot with us being able to review more reports in the same period of time. The review of these reports will focus on that report in the 2 tabs, and I'll show you one here in a moment. And then plus any additional documentation that's submitted through by the departments with that. And then what the departments get back from the reviewers is targeted feedback on different indicators that maybe they could improve on, or anything that the reviewers thought they did well, or that they could actually work on for next year. And then the goal is always to provide those findings to departments by the end of April or early May at the latest, before you're working on your report to submit for the current academic year. So how can departments use this feedback to improve? What we hope happens is when you get this feedback, and so you'll get a score and you'll know how you did on each indicator on the rubric. The comments provided by reviewers are in there as well. So we'll hope that you'll be able to discuss these with the department, and we'll also be making that rubric available. It should have been available to you when you got your report, but if not, we also will make that available. It'll be posted by the end of the week on our IU website if you want to go out and take a look at that rubric. So some general areas for improvement. One of the things that we noticed this last time when we went through is that some departments we're using an old reporting template, and we'll make tweaks and modifications. That's one thing that IE does. We use it as a quality improvement for our process as well. So when reviewers say, it would be really helpful if we had a place where they could tell us X, Y, or Z, then we will incorporate that into the assessment form. It also gets incorporated into future rubrics. So if you're using an old template from like 2 years ago, you may not even have a summary tab. And so there's a lot of information on that summary tab that are places the reviewer is going to look for information. So always go to the IE website and download the most current reporting template. Another thing that's really important for departments to do is give us a description of your program. Consider your audience, and that an external reviewer is not going to know all the particulars about your program. Like this program meets face-to-face, or it meets face-to-face and online, or it's also offered at the Fort Walton Beach campus. whatever there is about your program, it can start with what's maybe in the catalog or on your website, but tell us some of the particulars about your program. That gives context to what kind of data they should see, like should it be disaggregated between online and face-to-face? Or if you're only reporting online data, is that because this is a 100% online program and you don't have anything face-to-face? So if you'll kind of put that sort of information in the program description, it's really helpful to the reviewers, because they're just not going to know. And even though the reviewers for this formal review process are your colleagues here at the university, they may not know about every program. So please tell them as much as you can about the nature of your program. Another thing that's helpful is to be sure that your assessment methods align with the SLOs that were assessed. Every now and then we'll get some assessment instrument that's described that really doesn't quite fit with, so they used a direct assessment, the department used a direct assessment, but what they said they were assessing really didn't seem to fit the SLO. Like it might have been, they were using I think there was one example maybe from last year where they were using like Turnitin or something, but there was something that they were using that it really just did not seem to fit. So I would say just kind of look for those alignment things to make sure that your assessment methods will line up with your SLOs that you're assessing. This one is not meant to be a joke. Wear your improvement goggles. What we mean by that is when you think about your assessment findings and what your data are telling you, always keep an eye towards improvement of your program. Assessment reports are really, we use them for other things, but really they're about reflection within the department and how you can use this information to improve how your students perform. It's really, the lens should always be improvement. It's really not about validating grades or anything like that. It's really about improvement. We hope that you have strong assessment findings, but we've got some good examples that we'll provide later where you can talk about, even though faculty, the students did well on this, we went back and looked at took a granular look at the rubric findings for some of these students, and they could have benefited from X, Y, and Z. So always wear that improvement lens when you're working on your report. Try to broadly engage faculty in the improvement discussion. I know many of you on the call are chairs, and sometimes that's a challenge, and I do respect that tremendously. But even if you just reserve just a few minutes in a faculty meeting that you have scheduled, at a certain point to discuss the assessment findings and get their take on it, or even if you just report to them what you think it meant, you really need to engage your faculty in that discussion as much as possible. And if you can capture that through meeting minutes, that's really good. I saw Angela Hahn on the call earlier, and Angela's got some really good meeting minutes that we've actually been able to use to demonstrate, that broad faculty involvement. So it's really helpful when you can do that. That's one of your indicators, is showing broad faculty involvement and engagement in the process. And so that discussion with your faculty at whether it's a specially called meeting or a regular meeting, that's really strong evidence to a reviewer that faculty in your department are engaged in the process. So when you can show that and attach that as part of your evidence, that's really helpful to us.
I have a little bit of a funny aside if we have a minute.
Yes,
when we met for an assessment meeting a couple of weeks ago, we had 2 days of assessment, but only like 3 hours at a time. So it wasn't that miserable. So the first day, I made like 5 items that we were going to work on based, and I was thinking about it over, and I think actually Karen Nielsen was the one who said, "Aren't you going to vote on that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." So we came in the next day and I put these items up for a vote. And of the 5 items, I think they actually voted on 2 of them. 2 of them we decided weren't kind of items. And then I think another 2 of them, which doesn't total up to 5, but the faculty member who had said they were going to do that in their class reacted as if they had no idea what I was talking about. It was a difference of 24 hours. And that might just be a reflection on where you think a conversation has gone. It's probably an organizational thing, a psychology thing. Where you think a direction has gone isn't necessarily what your faculty think that they're doing. So as a best practice with, Robert's Rules of Order, once again, proves that we really do need to come back and make sure that we're agreeing to what we think we agree to.
That's an excellent point.
But the minutes will be better than they were last time.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And it really is important to do that. There is a field on your report, and we'll look at this a little bit more in a moment. Giving an actionable use of results to improve student learning. If there is $1 million question on this report anywhere, it's got to be that one. And it would be a question for each SLO that you assessed. So when you look at your data and you determine what you're going to do, be as specific as possible. Be very clear, very direct about what you're going to do. I can give examples of departments that have just done a really phenomenal job of being specific with their actionable use of results and how they're going to use that to improve student learning in the program. So that's good. The more specific you are, the less vague. One of the first times that Claudia and I went out on the road show and we're talking to, I think it was a group of chairs that we were talking to about improving assessment reporting. And so I had gone back through and compiled kind of like a greatest hits and a not so greatest hits of responses that departments had given. And for use of results, one faculty member had responded, call the department. Like that was the use of results, was call the department. So that was in the early days. And so I'm proud to say that for the last 2 years, no one has responded with call the department. So that is a huge improvement in assessment reporting, but in general, just the more specific you can be about what you think your data mean and what you're going to do to improve student learning is the best thing that you can do. I mean, that's one of the things that we really hope to show. And then another area, and this is the last one, to close the loop. And what they mean by closing the loop, that means making comparisons across multiple assessment cycles. So each assessment report, if you look at it annually, is kind of a snapshot of what the data told you for that year. But remember, most of you have assessment plans out there. And so at some point you have planned to reassess some of those SLOs that you had assessed in a prior year, and you probably had a use of results, like we said, we're going to implement X, Y, and Z. Don't forget at some point in the future to reassess that and tell us if you improved. Did it have an impact? If it didn't, it's okay. The whole purpose is that we're trying to improve. Nobody's getting in trouble because they didn't actually improve, but it's really helpful when you'll close the loop and you'll talk about it like 2 years or 3 years down the road. Like we saw this area where we thought we could make a difference, and this is what we did, and this is how it turned out. So just let us know, but don't forget to close the loop. Refer to those assessment plans. Those are out there on our site. If you don't have ready access to them, they are out there on the IE website. Whatever you submitted, we've got out there. So that's another area, and that's actually a new field on this year's report, which is another reason why it's really important to always use the most current reporting template. So where can you go to find all this stuff? We'll go to the IE website. You're going to go out here to the right-hand navigation, and you'll see SLO and assessment forms. And then you're going to find your college. When you expand that list, you're going to find your college and click on it, and then find your program. There's going to be a list of departments. Expand that list. This will be a plus sign, and when you click on it, then you'll see all of the information that you need, all of your documents for your various programs in your department. Your ALC or ALP, depending on whether it's an undergrad or a graduate program, your curriculum map that you submitted with your CCRs to finalize those SLOs, the 5-year plan that you have for assessment, and then the actual assessment form. And then when you click on this link, and I won't do it right here, but I'll show it to you on the other place. When you click on it, this year we've made it a Google Sheet. So it's nothing to download and distribute. You can, when you click on it, as long as you are logged in on that machine that you're working from with your UWF credentials, it should take you automatically to that folder. Then you can navigate to your current year assessment report for each one of the programs in your department. And it's already a Google Sheet, so whatever you type in there is going to be automatically saved. So there's no uploading, sending them to us to put in the folder. They're automatically there. The only thing is at the end of the process, we do ask that you email us to let us know that you finished it, because we won't automatically go in and check. We do try to keep kind of keep a gauge on that, but it's better if when you have finished your report and you've submitted all your documents, then it's all out there in the folder. Just shoot us an email and tell us that you've done that. So I want to take a moment and take you to the site so that you can see it. So this is, you should be looking at the IA assessment page. You'll navigate over here on the right to SLO and assessment forms, find your college, and I'll use Cache. We've updated the instructions to reflect that this is now a Google Sheet and it's already in your folder. So I would take a glance through the instructions to make sure that when you're finished, you're ready. Then you'll navigate to your department. Let's see, and it actually took us to their assessment folder. So we'll navigate to the current year, and then we see their folders for each of their programs. And then this is their most recent template. And there's an executive summary tab and a programmatic assessment tab, and you still have your instruction tab. One of the improvements that we made to the form over this year, we've always had instructions, but they were, if you tried to print them, they were 3 pages, and it might be hard to find the one thing that you needed to look up in that whole 3-page part. So what we did over here is now you have links. These are hyperlinks. So if you need more information about what should go in the program description, if you click on that link, it takes you to that particular place in the instructions. So we feel like it's much more helpful. I wanted to point out another new field. It's called description of sample or population used in the assessment report. Depending on your program and what's appropriate for your program, you may be collecting data from a particular course level data in your program that's appropriate to do. But when you get over here, we just need for you to describe how using those 2 sections or 3 sections or 1 section is going to make sense for your program. So what we used to have over here on the programmatic assessment tab, there used to be a field here that was called sections. And so we wanted you to tell us the number of sections that you had reported on. The idea was that it would give the reviewer some context about, is that an appropriate number of students to have made a decision about? And that got to be really problematic for some of our graduate programs, because they, they might be collecting assessment in as part of the thesis rubric. It might have been a thesis program they were writing at the end, and so they might have 8 sections of 8 students, and so to a reviewer they might not put that together. So what we did was we got rid of the sections tab, because it just never lived up to its promise of kind of giving a reviewer context about the number of students that you reported assessment on. And so we just put a field over here for you to kind of describe. We use 2 sections. It's a class that all students take at this particular point in the program. And so we feel like this is a really important place for us to gather assessment. And so, we're reporting on 2 sections, and there's, maybe 50 students between the 2 sections that we'll report on. So just kind of a rationale for who you're assessing is kind of what we're looking for in that field. This is the other field that I wanted to point out. This is column K. This is brand new. We've always had J, which was use of results to improve student learning. So that's kind of what the data from this snapshot, this annual year snapshot tells you. But column K is where you, if you have reassessed from a prior year, this is where you get a chance to tell us, you know, did the impact that we talked about making 2 years ago or 3 years ago, did it actually turn out like we thought or we'd hoped? And so that's what you'll tell us in column K. We've always left column L here, but it's always been optional. It's used for results to improve assessment. We left it there kind of to distinguish it from student learning. One of the things that I noticed as I would review some of those early assessment reports that were on the Qualtrics survey is sometimes departments would discuss how they were going to improve the assessment instrument, but not what they were hoping to get from student learning. Like almost as if to say, well, we think students would have done better if we'd had better test questions, or if we had designed a better rubric, or if we'd given more clear instructions. Well, those are all things that are important to do, but we're talking about student learning. Improving your assessment instrument, that's really not the purpose of the report, but if you want to talk about that, we give you a space to put it. So we did leave it on the report, but it's always been optional. You don't have to answer that one. But J and K are probably two of the most important fields to respond to. So J is still your use of results to improve student learning, but K is where you can actually close the loop from a prior year assessment. And you won't always have prior year assessment data to report on. So it's okay if for some of your outcomes, K doesn't have anything, but if this is a reassessment year on that particular outcome, then you do want to fill that in and tell us if it worked out like you had hoped. Any other questions at this point? That was kind of, I did want to show one other thing that we will also post. So let me see if I can put that up real fast. This is your summary report. This is kind of an institutional overview of the results of this last formal review of assessment for this past academic year. We're going to post this. This will be one of the things that we post, and will be available to you by the end of the week. So we'll be able to post that so you can take a look at it. But I wanted to point out to you, we have, there's a whole section on strengths of assessment work in the colleges and departments. And so this is helpful to read through. And then the observations, these are suggested actions to improve the quality of assessment and the clarity of the reporting. This, you may find, this is a little bit broader, but it'll kind of give you an idea of, you know, things that the reviewers noticed and themes that kind of came out of looking at 120 assessment reports across the university. Also included in here is a description of the rubric. So we have 3 sections. You have your reporting criteria, you have your maturity of assessment, which is where most of the indicators fall, is in that maturity of assessment section, and then evidence of impact, which is section 3. And it's probably the smallest one. You know, there's only like 2 indicators for that one. And then this is these are the averages by college for the graduate programs and the undergraduate programs. They're broken out separately. And then this was the rubric that was used. So if you had any questions about what was used to score a certain section, then you can refer to that rubric. So we'll be posting this report out there very soon. There's one other thing that I wanted to show everyone that's kind of an announcement. I think I shared the wrong thing. Let's see, let's try that again. Okay. Do you see Claudia J. Stanley Excellence in Assessment Award? Okay, good. Some of you that attended Claudia's little retirement virtual party saw this. And for those of you that haven't, this is kind of an announcement, and we'll be sending out an email as well. But we got the provost to kind of get on board with providing a stipend to departments that are doing a really good job on assessment. We'll only be able to give out one of these per year. And so, but it will be based on results of formal review of assessment. And so basically what we're trying to do is recognize departments that have provided a compelling story of how they seek improvement of student learning through the assessment processes in their department. And then some of the things that the reviewers will look for will be things like describing the incorporation of best practices at the highest level to improve student learning, and then the description of any impact of implemented changes from a prior year assessment. So those are some of the things that they'll look at as well. Another thing that I wanted to show that's going to be new for this year, so just to kind of keep in mind, and you may want to refer back to how you did this year to kind of see where you would have fallen. We are actually giving some levels of recognition to programs and departments based on where they're at in their maturity of assessment reporting. So just like you can get a gold medal at the Olympics, you can get a gold level maturity of assessment level of recognition as well. And so this will describe the criteria, but it's based off of formal review of assessment and how many of those indicators you have included or you have met from that maturity of assessment section. There will also be, at some point very soon, we're working with institutional communications. There will be some badges that will go with each one of these. It'll go with the Claudia J. Stanley Excellence in Assessment Award, and it will also go with their maturity of assessment levels of recognition. So if you are at the gold level, then you'll get a badge that you can actually put on your department's page to show that you have reached that gold level of maturity of assessment. So we'll be making those available soon, and we're not awarding them for this past year because nobody knew about it, but as we're discussing and you're getting ready to turn in assessment reports for this year, these would be some recognition that would be available to you and your department as you move forward. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of that day.